I'm going to come up with a thought experiment on the spot. I'm sure you've never heard of this one before. Let's assume there's a trolley and it's hurtling down a track. You're standing at a distance. There's a lever next to you. You can switch tracks with the trolley. You have two actions at the moment. If the trolley continues down its track, it's going to kill 5 people who are on the track, can't move. If you pull the lever, switch the tracks, the trolley is going to go move to the second track where there's one person who can't move. So the big question is whether you kill 5 or you kill 1. Came up with this thought experiment on the spot. I'm sure you've never heard of this.
It's really good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not a classic thought experiment at all.
No.
And the central question is, what is the right thing to do, right? But let's break it down into the 3 questions that you provided earlier. The first question is what I ought to do, which is a question around ethics. There's another question, I guess this is the deliberation, the action, what I will do. I guess it's a descriptive question around...
Right, there's a descriptive question.
Yeah, around like, I guess, predictive psychology.
Right.
And then we're squeezing in this additional question that you mentioned in the middle, which is what to do.
Right.
Let's linger on this a bit more. You introduced the topic earlier, but let's talk about the philosophy of breaking into these 3 questions. What is the fundamental difference between these 3 questions? Why should we break this problem down to these 3 questions?
Good. Yeah. So the what I ought to do for purposes of the discussion, I think it's best to just stipulate we will interpret that as realists interpret it, meaning that just like in the math case, we just look at the language and give the best analysis of the language. Let's do that with the ethics case. So what I ought to do then, I mean, most linguists today, I think, would say that involves an operator, but that's not relevant for our discussion. So, you know, we could say like killing the 1 to save the 5 is good. That's a subject predicate claim according to standard linguistic analysis, and so that's just a claim about the world. It's just like a claim like that's a restaurant or that's a couch, right? So it's like you pick something out that we all agree to exist. We're ascribing a predicate to it. There's a debate that I gestured at the beginning of this discussion, which is kind of like, what's the metaphysical issue when we grant that what are called the subvenient facts are there, the things that, but okay, so there's that question. There's also then just a question of, as you said, descriptive psychology. You know, is part of the business of psychology is to predict what humans will do in different circumstances, and it's unnerving, but you know, sometimes they can do it. Even when we feel free, for example, sometimes they can tell what you're going to do before you you have conscious knowledge of making the decision. So, you know, however much I take no stand on that, but there is that question. There's just the descriptive predictive question. You know, what will Justin do in this circumstance?
Yeah.
But right, I think there's another question, and it brings itself out by considering the issue of pluralism. But pluralism is not a necessary component to getting this question. The question comes out whenever we question our own normative concepts. So whenever we ask ourselves, like, you know, there's a lot of concepts we've inherited which we've decided are bad concepts. They involve presuppositions which are false, or maybe they're just corrupt or not useful, or, you know, there's something bad about them. So we give them up and replace them with new ones. So, you know, you mentioned being taught in kindergarten that you know, the sun rises. Well, yeah, right. Similarly, yeah, maybe it's built into the concept of the you know, our kindergarten conception of the sun that it rises or something. And so we give up that concept and we learn a slightly different concept that's very similar to that one, but instead it's about the relative positions of the earth and the sun rather than about the absolute rising of the sun or something. And similarly, you know, we gave up the concept of the ether, and we gave up the concept of absolute velocity and things like this. Okay, so you can imagine, and people have made the point vivid, like Nietzsche makes the point vivid, that we somehow have inherited normative. Normative just means having to do with norms. So I'm talking about any concept that has to do with norms. It doesn't have to be morality per se, but it certainly includes morality.
Yep.
You can imagine learning that, you know, our normative concepts were inherited, you know, via some process or from some group or something that should call into question whether to follow them. Right. So let me give you a very like down to earth example of something that I think is probably not impossible. So it could be that our concept of responsibility, moral responsibility, entails that if you're responsible for something, you deserve retribution. So it's just part of that concept that if you're morally responsible, you deserve retribution. Now, I don't know whether that's true. I'm just imagine that's true. It could happen. I mean, it's a concept, and the concepts can come with lots of things built into them. So let's just imagine that's true. Would that then settle the question of whether to retribute, whether to respond to those responsible as opposed to practicing forgiveness or something? I'm not saying you should practice forgiveness against the responsible. I'm saying, would that settle the question? Knowing that someone is in fact responsible, does that settle whether they deserve retribution? And you might say, well, sure, it settles whether they deserve retribution, but it doesn't settle whether to retribute. And the point is that that's not just a kind of disconnect in the sense that we have disconnects with weakness of will, right? Sometimes I fail to do what I know I ought to do, but I endorse that value and just can't get myself to do it because I'm too selfish or something. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying sometimes we fail to endorse the moral facts, or at least we can. We can intelligibly ask ourselves whether to endorse, say, this notion of responsibility. Or should we instead replace it with another notion, responsibility star, which doesn't build in retribution? So the person is responsible, I grant that. It's all the conditions are met. But I'm not going to retribute even though they deserve, by definition, retribution. Mm-hmm. Because I endorse responsibility star. Yeah. That's the roadmap I'm going to use. You can think then of all of these different, moral like theories. I'm calling them moral like because morality is whatever we actually refer to, right? So there's like morality and schmorality star and so forth. And there's all these you can think of them all as just different prescriptions, like, like a bunch of instruction manuals. Now the question is which instruction manual to use. Mm-hmm. That's not the question of which I ought to use, because I'll be speaking some language using some instruction manual, and any reasonable instruction manual is going to tell me, use me. Yeah. It's going to be self-sanctioning. Yeah. So that's why I think there's deliberative distance. So yeah, there's the question of just what's good and bad understood as a factual matter. And I don't see any particular reason actually to think there can't be mind-independent facts about that, as I've said. I think realism is actually not a particularly dramatic position once you really get clear on what it would involve. But you can sort of see how it's a letdown if there's this extra question. Because you wanted realism to not just there to be facts about what I ought to do, but to somehow they settle deliberation. But what could that possibly mean? They settle deliberation. You don't want it to mean they make you do something, because maybe don't do what I have to do. So what I think is that realism, in the sense that I think realists really want, it's not just false. There's not a coherent position there. They're confusing things about our deliberation, the deliberative standpoint, with things about the world and the facts. And I should say that I'm not the first person in the world to think there's something incoherent about moral realism, but this is I hope a useful kind of new way to put the problem. Like Mackey famously said that moral properties would be, utterly mysterious and different from anything we've ever seen. That might be right, but what's the problem exactly? It's that if you try to give content to this idea that they settle deliberation, there's just no way to do it that doesn't end up making it really about us. It's up to me. Like there could be a descriptive fact that whenever I consult those facts, I end up doing the thing they tell me to. That's not what we want. We want it to be the case that somehow the facts make it the case that do that. What could that mean?